Shaq was one of the most dominant big men in NBA history. Many NBA fans remember his time with Kobe and the Lakers, where Shaq cemented his legacy as an all-time great, winning 1 MVP, 3 championships, and 3 Finals MVPs. But many people forget, before Kobe, he was already playing with Penny Hardaway, a superstar in his own like, drawing comparisons to Magic Johnson. His elite athleticism and playmaking, along with his size, were like nothing the NBA had seen at the time, as he could run down the floor and display his amazing court vision to open shooters or streaking big men. But he could also take it to the rack and finish in a multitude of ways. Include role players such as sharpshooter Dennis Scott, the modern-day 3-and-D player Nick Anderson, and rebounding and defensive specialist Horace Grant, and this team was drawing comparisons to the Showtime Lakers. They seemed destined for multiple championships and the creation of the next great NBA dynasty. At only 23 and 24 years old respectively, Shaq and Penny had already been to the finals, eliminated Jordan and the Bulls in the playoffs, and led the Magic to 57 and 60 win seasons respectively. But then, it all fell apart. The Magic lowballed Shaq, and the city of Orlando turned their back on him. In the coming seasons post-Shaq, Penny's career would be derailed with constant knee injuries, and just like that, the Magic was gone. But what if we can go back to 1996, where the Magic don't lowball Shaq, and Penny Hardaway doesn't suffer their career-altering injuries so early into his career? How would the league change? The answer is a lot. Not much changed in the 1997 NBA season. The Magic win 16 more games as a result of having Shaq and a healthy Penny Hardaway on their roster, and the Lakers lose 6 games in the absence of Shaq. Their rookie Kobe Bryant does step up and emerge as a possible future star, averaging 15.5 points in his first season. In the playoffs, the Lakers squeak out a first-round win against the Blazers, but ultimately lose to the Jazz in the second round. In the Eastern Conference, Shaq and Penny once again face the Bulls, this time in the Eastern Conference Finals, and lose in a tough-fought 7-game series. In the finals, Jordan avenges his MVP loss as the Bulls beat the Jazz in 6 games, with Michael Jordan capturing his 5th ring and Finals MVP. Nothing major changes in the 1997 offseason, now on to the 98 regular season. Once again, there aren't any major changes in the regular season, as the Lakers lose 7 more games in the absence of Shaq, but still finished with an impressive 54 wins, and the Magic win 19 more games, as Shaq and Penny emerge themselves as the best duo in the NBA. MVP fatigue hit Jordan in 98, as the award he originally won was given to Shaq as he led the Magic to 60 wins, averaging 28 points and 11 rebounds. In 98, the Bulls passed the torch to the Magic. This year, Pippen had a late start to the season due to contract disputes with the front office and a foot surgery. He wasn't ready come playoff time and struggled. Add Shaq's dominance down low, averaging 30 points per game and 15 rebounds per game, and the Bulls' dynasty was stopped a year shorter. So in this reality, we never get the last dance. The Magic ride this momentum into the 98 Finals as they beat the Jazz to win their first championship in franchise history. Without Shaq, the Lakers trade Eddie Jones to the Raptors for shot-blocking big man Marcus Camby, and with their draft pick, they take Al Harrington. Indiana, who originally took Harrington in the draft, now take Rashard Lewis with their pick. In the lockout-shortened 99 season, the Magic won an astonishing 42-8, as Shaq and Penny had another year together to grow and improve. The lockout really hurt the Lakers. After a promising last 2 seasons, with 2 straight playoff appearances, the team took a step back. Nick Van Exel left in the offseason, Camby's production didn't come close to Shaq's, and Kobe was the only person who was productive offensively. Karl Malone still won MVP, and with the loss of Camby, the Knicks' magical run in the 99 playoffs never happens, as they actually missed the playoffs by 2 games. The 99 finals between the Spurs and Magic exposed the Magic's biggest weakness, which was the lack of frontcourt depth. Shaq could check Robinson, but the team had no solution for Duncan. Horace Grant was too old and slow, Dennis Scott wasn't strong enough, and Bo Outlaw was too short. Duncan dominated in the series, leading the Spurs to their first title in his first finals appearance, averaging 27 points, 14 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. Due to the Knicks losing a few extra games, they actually jumped into the top 3 of the draft and landed Baron Davis, as they hope he, Allen Houston, and Latrell Sprewell can coincide to become a big 3. With a better pick in the lottery, the Lakers steal Ron Artest to replace Eddie Jones. And after a stunning loss to the Spurs, the Magic knew they needed to improve on their defense, so with the last pick in the first round, the Magic drafted 6'10" forward out of Russia, Andrei Karolinko. They hope he can be a improvement for their future as he's quick enough to stay onto guards and long enough to handle bigs down low. In free agency, the Magic signed former sixth man Detlef Schrempf to provide shooting off the bench. Orlando was reloaded for another finals victory, now on to the 2000 season. Nothing seemed to stop the juggernaut that was the Orlando Magic this season. They dominated the season, winning an astonishing 68 games, as Shaq once again won MVP, averaging 30 points and 14 rebounds. Penny Hardaway also balled out this season, earning a first-team All-NBA selection with averages of 23 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds. This dominance carried all the way into the playoffs as the Magic made it to the finals, where they would face the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers did a solid job containing Shaq's dominance, as he averaged 5 less points on 4 less % efficiency. This series made Penny into a legitimate superstar who could thrive when Shaq struggled. He averaged 24 points and 8 assists on nearly 56% shooting. The Blazer guards could not match Penny's height and athleticism, as he led the Magic to another ring, winning Finals MVP in the process. In the 2000 draft, the Bulls lucked into the number 1 pick and landed Kenyon Martin. Since the Bulls took Martin, the Nets decided to keep Jamal Crawford. Even after winning the chip, the Magic had the 5th pick in the draft from Golden State because of the Penny Hardaway-Chris Webber trade, so they decided to take sharpshooter Mike Miller to provide scoring off the bench. In the real 2000 free agency, the Magic landed 2 superstars at Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady, but obviously this doesn't happen in this scenario. T-Mac, finding no other alternative option, re-signs with the Raptors, and Grant Hill signs with the Sixers, as Allen Iverson has had no supporting cast around him despite his individual excellence. This means Ben Wallace, who was originally sent to Detroit as part of the sign and trade to get Grant Hill, stays in Orlando. Now on to the 0-1 season. Everything just seemed to click for the Magic as they elevated their play even more. Shaq and Penny were solidifying themselves as the next Magic and Kareem. Ben Wallace averaged 13 rebounds per game, and Karolinko became the lockdown defender Orlando needed. Orlando had the best defense by far with their starting 5, and their backup point guard Darrell Armstrong even managed to win 6th Man of the Year, averaging 16 and 7. Chucky Atkinson and Horace Grant were also key contributors all at the bench, and all this culminated into the Magic winning 74 games, beating the Bulls' record by 2. Shaq won unanimous MVP with averages of 29 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks per game. The loser in this MVP discussion, AI, thought he was going to have more help on the Sixers with the signing of Grant Hill, but Hill only managed to play 4 games this season before going down to his season-ending injury. In the 0-1 playoffs, the Magic dominated their way throughout the playoffs, only losing once to the Raptors in the conference finals. In the Western Conference, the Lakers shocked the world by upsetting the Spurs in the second round in what is known as Kobe's coming out party. He dominated the Spurs' awful backcourt, averaging 37 points per game on efficient shooting splits as they upset the Spurs in 6 games on their way to the Western Conference finals. Their miracle ended there, as the Kings were just too experienced for the young Lakers, but LA seemed primed for a great future. The 0-1 finals proved the Magic's dominance once again, as there was no answer for Shaq and Penny, and it was nearly impossible to score against their defense headed by Karolinko and Ben Wallace. In the 0-1 draft, the Pistons had the number 3 overall pick and took Pau Gasol, a good consolation for missing out on Ben Wallace. The Nets take Shane Battier, which means the Rockets draft Richard Jefferson. And despite missing out on Battier and Gasol, the Grizzlies are able to take future All-Star Joe Johnson with the 10th pick. Now on to the 0-2 season. This season, Penny battled with knee injuries throughout the entire year as he only played in 60 games, but the Magic were still able to win 67 games as Darrell Armstrong and Chucky Atkins performed well in Penny's place. Andre Karolinko and Ben Wallace went up another level defensively as Wallace won Defensive Player of the Year, leading the league with 3.5 blocks. Shaq won his 3rd straight MVP, his 4th total, as Penny struggled to stay consistently healthy, but still led the Magic to the number 1 overall record. After an impressive season where he led the Sixers to 56 wins, Allen Iverson once again without much help as Grant Hill again went down with a season-ending injury, only playing 14 games. After an impressive 0-1 campaign, the Lakers failed to live up to their playoff expectations as they only reached the 6th seed and were eliminated in the first round by Dallas. Kobe starts complaining to the Lakers front office of his lack of help offensively. In the playoffs, the Magic didn't dominate as they did the 2 previous seasons, were still by and far the best team in the league. The Eastern Conference Finals in 0-2 was an amazing hard-fought series between the Magic and Raptors. McGrady and Vince Carter balled out as Orlando had no answer for them, but Toronto simply couldn't stop Shaq. He averaged 36 points and 16 rebounds during the series, carrying the Magic to the finals despite a struggling performance by Penny and an amazing series by T-Mac and Vince. But in the 0-2 finals, the Magic just seemed too much for Sacramento as Orlando three-peats joined the likes of the Jordan Bulls, Bill Russell Celtics, and George Mikan's Lakers as they now solidified themselves as an NBA dynasty. Since the Rockets lost one more game with the acquisition of Richard Jefferson, the Nuggets now luck into the number 1 pick and select Yao Ming. This year, the Sonics still traded their former franchise player and future Hall of Famer Gary Payton to the Bucks for Ray Allen to start a new era in Seattle. The Lakers, who are trying to hold on to as much talent as they can to please Kobe, don't trade Marcus Camby to the Nuggets, and the Magic, who originally traded Mike Miller to the Grizzlies for Drew Gooden, now need him as the backcourt is getting older and Penny is showing signs of nagging lower body injuries. Now on to the 03 season. This season seemed like the beginning of the end for Orlando's dynasty. Penny Hardaway went out for the season with a lower body injury just 20 games into the season. They won only 61 games, the least since the 98 season. The team was good with Shaq and Ben Wallace being the best frontcourt in the NBA, Karolinko being the glue guy, and Mike Miller emerging as a star, averaging 16 points per game in just his third season, but the team was missing something that made them great. Without Penny, the Magic lacked a floor general, someone who controls the pace of the offense and makes sure everyone gets involved. Despite the carry job Shaq had to do for the Magic to win 61 games, MVP voters got fatigued and decided to vote Tim Duncan for this year's MVP. Even though the Magic lacked Penny, they were still picked as the favorites to come out of the East, but in the second round, the Pacers came into Orlando and upset the Magic in the second round. Reggie Miller made all kinds of shots as he was determined to finally make it to the big dance, and Jermaine O'Neal and Rashard Lewis just ran Wallace and Shaq out of the series. Lewis pulled Ben Wallace out of the paint with his three-point shooting, and Jermaine O'Neal was too athletic for the older Shaq. The Pacers' run came up too short as they lost to the Nets in the conference finals. The NBA Finals ends the same way it did in real life, with Tim Duncan carrying the Spurs to a chip over the Nets in 6 games. The 2003 draft is known as one of the most stacked drafts with 4 Hall of Famers in LeBron, Wade, Bosh, and Melo. Bron still goes 1 to Cleveland. The Pistons once again luck into the number 2 pick, and they still take Darko as they need a center without Ben Wallace. The first change happens at the number 3 pick as the Clippers land this pick and take Carmelo Anthony. The Raptors no longer take Bosh as they are significantly better with T-Mac, so now it's the Nuggets who draft Bosh at 4. But the Raptors do get a consolation prize in David West with the 12th pick. Finally, the Rockets, who missed out on Yao Ming the previous year, now need a center and draft Chris Kaman with the 6th pick. Kobe Bryant has had little help during his time without Shaq on the Lakers. He's had to carry the load offensively, and despite his amazing individual accomplishments, he has still found little playoff success. Kobe has threatened the team on multiple occasions that if he doesn't get help, he's either going to demand a trade or leave the Lakers once his contract is up. The Lakers realize they need to make big moves, so they sign former All-Stars Gary Payton and Karl Malone, but they still need one more piece to become true championship contenders. In New York, the Knicks decide they need to shake up the roster with the beginning of the Isaiah Thomas era. Baron Davis has been an amazing athlete and solid scorer his whole career, but it's clear he can't be your number 1 option. The Lakers, seeing a discontented Kobe, jump on the opportunity to snag the All-Star instead of the Warriors by trading away a package of Derek Fisher, a 2005 first, and a 2008 first for the All-Star point guard. Now on to the 04 season. Everything seemed to click for the Lakers as they won 71 games in what can only be described as a dream season. Kobe won his first MVP, scoring 28 points per game on 45% shooting. Baron Davis also didn't disappoint his first season as a Laker, as he earned an All-Star nod with 23 points per game, 8 assists per game, and led the league in steals with almost 3 a game. Ron Artest also emerged this season as a third option, earning his first All-Star nod, averaging 18 points per game on 50% shooting, while winning Defensive Player of the Year with 2 steals per game and a block per game. Include a slew of excellent role players like defensive prowess Marcus Camby, the mailman Karl Malone, and the glove Gary Payton, and you understand why this season was the dream season for the Lakers. The Magic were still chugging along, winning 62 games as the team finally got a healthy season of Penny Hardaway, but it was obvious he wasn't the same player as he was before. Ben Wallace and Andre Karolinko were both top 5 defenders as they both averaged 3 blocks and 2 steals per game, but missed out on the Defensive Player of the Year race. The Magic still struggled to get over the hump that was the Pacers, this time losing to them in the Eastern Conference Finals. Reggie Miller hit all kinds of shots again, and Jermaine O'Neal and Rashard Lewis just took Ben Wallace and Shaq out of the series with their ability to shoot the ball and just their general athleticism. But in the end, it didn't matter how good the Pacers were, as nothing was stopping the Lakers this season. The Lakers capped off their dream season with Kobe taking home Finals MVP, averaging 32 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, and 5 assists. In the 04 draft, the Clippers luck into the number 1 pick and take Dwight Howard, as they now have a young core in Melo and Dwight. And the Suns, who no longer have Joe Johnson, keep Luol Deng instead of trading him to the Bulls. In the 04 free agency, Shaq isn't traded as he is in real life because the Magic want to run it back one more time to see if they can end their dynasty on top, and Kenyon Martin isn't traded to the Nuggets as they already have Yao Ming and Chris Bosh on their roster. Now on to the 05 season. This was the first season in a while where there was no clear frontrunner to win the finals, as there were 6 legitimate teams who could win it all this year. The Magic were still here with Shaq, who had another MVP caliber season. The Heat won 58 games and were led by a young Dwayne Wade, who in just his second season averaged 24 points on 49% shooting, making the second team All-NBA. In the West, the Lakers, who just won the finals last year, won 56 games this year, and the Spurs, who have been the second best team throughout this entire what-if scenario, had the best record in the West, going 59-23. And the Suns were the second seed, being led by this season's MVP Steve Nash, who suddenly became a top 5 player after leaving Dallas. But despite losing the MVP, the Mavs still had a great season themselves, winning 58 games. But because of the division rule, teams weren't properly seeded, and teams that should have been playing later on in the playoffs got stuck playing each other earlier. The Lakers and Mavs played each other in the first round, with the Lakers beating Dallas in 6 games, but the reigning champs would lose to the Spurs in the next round. The Suns got 2 easy opponents in the Nuggets in the first round and the Sonics in the second round, and met the Spurs in the conference finals. And like the real-life scenario, the Spurs make it to the finals. On the east side of the bracket, the 2 best teams had to face each other in the second round in the Heat and Magic. The future of the NBA presented itself in this series, as the Heat seemed just to be a year or 2 away from dominating the East. So we get the 1999 finals rematch between the Spurs and Magic. This time, the team's looking very different. No longer is San Antonio led by David Robinson, but now Duncan is joined by Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. And on the other side, Shaq has a severely worse Penny, but now has defensive studs in Andrea Karolinko and Ben Wallace. The Magic risked their stars leaving and gaining assets for the last hurrah. 1 more finals to cap off the best dynasty since Jordan's Bulls, and they got just that. It seemed like the most storybook ending you can imagine. They struggled early on with Nick Anderson's missed free throws in the finals and the challenge that was the Jordan Bulls. They overcome adversity and win their first chip, but they knew they needed to get better to become a dynasty, so they added Ben Wallace and Karolinko. They then proceeded to win 3 straight finals, and then when it seemed like they no longer had it, they came together and won that last championship together. In the 2005 offseason, the Blazers landed the number 1 pick and selected Andrew Bogut. The Hornets, now 1 slot ahead, take Darren Williams instead of Chris Paul, who now falls to Charlotte at 4. With the Lakers being the Western Conference powerhouse they are, it is the Cavs who take Andrew Bynum with the 10th pick in hopes he can be a complementary piece for LeBron. Like all good things, the Magic's dynasty had to end at some point. Penny was no longer the player he used to be. It was obvious Shaq wanted to expand his life off the court, and Karolinko and Ben Wallace weren't good enough to carry a team offensively. 2005 marked the end for one of the best dynasties ever, and the Magic entered rebuild mode with superstar big man Shaquille O'Neal leaving for LA in hopes of surpassing MJ in rings. They traded Ben Wallace and 6th man Chucky Atkins to the Mavericks in exchange for young point guard Devin Harris. They traded Karolinko to the Suns in exchange for Luol Deng in the 2009 first. The Magic entered a new era led by Marcus Camby, who was acquired in the Shaq signing trade, Luol Deng, Devin Harris, Mike Miller, and a shell of Penny Hardaway. Now on to the 2006 season. The big storyline entering the 2006 season was who was going to replace the Magic as the team to beat in the East. Many people thought the Heat would step up in Orlando's place after they lost in a well-fought 6-game series against them last year. The clear frontrunner was the Detroit Pistons, who finally found team success after missing out on Ben Wallace, winning an astonishing 66 games centered on team basketball. Pistons fans believed this team could scrape out a few chips and bridge the gap between Shaq's Magic and the Dwayne Wade Heat or LeBron James Cavaliers, similar to what the Pistons did in the late 80s and early 90s. Speaking of LeBron James, his individual play finally resulted in team success and a playoff appearance as the Cavs won 50 games, earning the 4th seed behind LeBron's 31 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, and 7 assists per game with a first-team All-NBA selection. In the West, there was once again a slaughterhouse between 5 teams who thought they had a legitimate threat to win it all. The Clippers, with the emergence of Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony, along with Elton Brand, won 55 games this year. The Lakers, whose championship core from 2004 was still mostly intact, just added Shaq to the roster to create even more star power in LA, winning 59 games this season. The Suns, who despite losing Amari Stoudemire at the beginning of the season, win 62 games as Steve Nash takes over and carries the offense. But unlike real life, Nash loses his second MVP to Dirk, who leads the Mavericks to a 70-win season. The addition of Ben Wallace adds another dimension to their defense they never had before, with Shawn Bradley and Eric Dampier manning the middle. Now Wallace can take on the defensive responsibilities instead of Dirk, who focused on his offense more this season, averaging 27 points and 9 rebounds on 40% shooting from behind the arc. In the playoffs, the West was an absolute bloodbath on the road to the finals. The Spurs and Lakers had to face each other in the first round in what was an epic first-round series, but the Spurs came out on top as their ball movement was too much for LA, and Duncan got the best of Shaq in this rematch. The Mavs and Spurs had to battle it out in the second round, and the Mavs season continues on. Dirk's height and unblockable shot made it impossible for him to be stopped, and Wallace could keep up and contain Duncan. The Clippers had a generally easy path in the Western Conference. They faced the 44-win Melo-less Nuggets in the first round and won a sweep. In the second round, they played the Amari-less Suns, who the Clippers in real life actually took the Suns to 7 games. But now it's an easy 5-game series, as instead of Chris Kaman and Coutinho Mobley as their starting center and small forward, they have Dwight Howard and Carmelo Anthony. In the conference finals, the Mavs eliminated the Clippers in 6 games, but the future seemed bright for the little brother in LA, as the Clippers already won 55 games with a young core centered on Carmelo and Dwight, who were only 20 and 21 years old. In the East, the Heat were led by an all-worldly performance in Dwayne Wade, averaging 32, 7, and 9 on 57% shooting to overcome the Pistons and making it to their first finals in franchise history. So we get the real-life finals matchup in 06 with different circumstances. Dwayne Wade was playing at a greater level than in real life, but lacked another star in Shaquille O'Neal. This meant he averaged 36 points in the season, but his efficiency dropped significantly as there was no other star for Dallas to focus their attention on. This means instead of Miami winning in 6, Dallas now wins the finals in 6 games. In the 06 draft, only a few changes occur. The Pacers now luck into the number 1 pick and take Andrea Bargnani. The Grizzlies, who need another wing to pair with Joe Johnson, take Brandon Roy in hopes he and Joe can form a 1-2 punch. This means that the Rockets, who originally traded Rudy Gay to Memphis on draft night, now keep the UConn product. And the Clippers, who are riding their Western Conference Finals appearance, need a young point guard to facilitate their offense for the future and draft Rajon Rondo. The Heat, who need fresh talent to help Wade, take Villanova product Kyle Lowry. And the Clippers, who just secured their future point guard in Rondo, trade Sam Cassell for sharpshooter Peja Stojakovic in hopes that he can knock down clutch shots and provide veteran leadership. The Magic, who realize Marcus Camby won't be in their future, trade him to Minnesota for Michael Olowokandi, a 2008 and 2010 first-round pick. And finally, the Nuggets signed veteran point guard and former superstar Penny Hardaway to provide veteran leadership and be a playmaker off the bench. With that signing, the Magic Dynasty is officially done. Now on to the 07 season. In the 07 season, the Mavs took their championship momentum and won an almost record-breaking 73 games as they were once again the overwhelming favorites to win it all, and Dirk won his second straight MVP, this time unanimous, as he carried the Mavs to the best offense in the league, averaging 25 and 9 on a 50-40-90 season. The West was so good, but there was a noticeable drop-off in everyone's win columns in the regular season. The Lakers and Clippers both experienced down seasons despite the high expectations that were put on them before the season. And the Suns and Spurs were both dominant, but they too saw decreases in the win column from the year before. In the East, it was apparent that the carry job D-Wade had to put on in the playoffs put a toll on his body, as he only played in 51 games this season, and the Heat only managed to obtain the 4th seed. The Raptors came out of nowhere, winning 60 games, a 23-win increase from the last season, obtaining the 2nd seed behind Tracy McGrady's 25 points per game and 7 assists per game, and Vince Carter's 25 points per game on 45% shooting, along with contributions from All-Star David West. In the playoffs, Vince and T-Mac finally found playoff success that had eluded their careers thus far. They beat LeBron in the second round and then faced the veteran Detroit Pistons in the conference finals. At this point, Vince and T-Mac were destined to make their first ever finals appearance, and they do exactly that, as the Pistons had no answer for stopping them. In the West, Dirk struggled offensively like he did in real life, but Dallas was such a good team defensively with Ben Wallace that they managed to beat the Jazz and Lakers in the first 2 rounds. But in the conference finals, Dirk's subpar performance reared its ugly head, and the shots he hit last year were no longer dropping. Because of this, San Antonio could now focus more on containing Jason Terry and Josh Howard. In what was viewed as one of the greatest regular seasons in NBA history, fell short of greatness as the Mavs choked on the biggest stage against a team they've overmatched before. In this scenario, the finals are more competitive than their real-life counterpart, as Toronto wins 2 games in this series, but the Raptors' defense was horrible, as Duncan cooked West in the post, and McGrady and Carter wouldn't grow defensively to begin with. So the Spurs win the 07 finals as they did in real life, this time Tim Duncan winning finals MVP with averages of 25 points, 14 rebounds, and 4 blocks per game. In the 07 draft, the Sonics land the number 1 pick and still take Kevin Durant. This means the Kings with the 2nd pick take Greg Oden. The Bucks also need a center and take Al Horford, and the Spurs, who managed to find every diamond in the rough, take Pau Gasol's little brother Mark in the 2nd round, as the Lakers already had Shaq. The 2007 offseason saw the creation of the first ever super team in the Big Three Boston Celtics with KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. This still happens as both Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett trades go through, but the Celtics are lacking a significant piece of that team in Rajon Rondo. The Raptors, after being exposed defensively in the finals, signed rim protector Marcus Camby in hopes he can elevate the Raptors to become a better team defensively. The Heat, who realized Wade needs stars around him in order to sustain his health, signed Grant Hill, as Hill managed to stay healthy for 65-plus games in 2 of the last 3 seasons, earning an All-Star nod and averaging 16 points per game in that span. They also traded their 2008 first-round pick for scorer Mike Miller in hopes he can play off-ball in catch-and-shoot situations or create his own shot off the dribble when Wade isn't playing. LeBron has spent his career thus far carrying the likes of Boobie Gibson, Anderson Varejao, and Eric Snow to multiple 50-win-plus seasons. Seeing the Heat restocking all players, the Pistons still being a formidable opponent in the East, the Raptors' emergence last season, and the Celtics' formation of the Big Three, the Cavs realize they need to get LeBron help or will leave once his contract is up. First, they trade veteran big man Zydrunas Ilgauskas to Indiana in exchange for Rashard Lewis and a 2010 first. Then they trade the infamous Boobie Gibson along with Larry Hughes, a 2009 first, and a 2011 first for 8-time All-Star and Hall of Fame point guard Jason Kidd. Finally, the Lakers don't trade Powell as he already has a great team around him in Detroit, and LA doesn't have the money to trade for him. Now on to the 2008 season. Let's talk about Chris Paul. This season, he had one of the greatest individual seasons for someone who was only 22 years old, as he averaged 21 points, 12 assists, and 3 steals a game on 49% shooting and a league-best 18 win shares, carrying one of the worst teams in the Bobcats to the 4th seed, whose next best players were Gerald Wallace and a declining Jason Richardson. This great season didn't lead to an MVP, as his lack of team success was overshadowed by a player who was just as good in Kobe Bryant, whose team had the best record in the West, winning 61 games, with Kobe winning his second MVP with averages of 28 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists on 46% shooting. The Celtics were still a great team, winning 59 games, a 7-game difference, but missing Rondo no longer made this team all-time, nor did they emulate the magical season they originally had. They still make the finals as both LeBron didn't have enough help to overcome 3 Hall of Famers, and the Pistons always found a way to lose when it mattered most. But unlike the real-life scenario, the Lakers come out on top with Kobe winning his second ring and second Finals MVP, and now Shaq has surpassed Jordan in Finals victories, solidifying the thought that he is the GOAT, not MJ. In the 2008 draft, the Bulls, who originally lucked into hometown hero Derrick Rose, lose an extra 7 games in the 07-08 season, and this actually ruins their draft positioning, as now the Nets, who have the 9th best odds, land Derrick Rose to become their franchise cornerstone and lead the next era of Nets basketball following the departure of all-time great point guard Jason Kidd. The Bulls now, with that Rose, go with forward Danilo Gallinari, as there's a noticeable void in the small forward position with Luol Deng no longer on the roster. The Knicks, who have been rebuilding since the late 90s, now have the 4th pick and take athletic freak and Russell Westbrook in hopes he can run newly hired head coach Mike D'Antoni's 7 seconds or less run and gun offense. The Sonics, who can no longer take Russ, go with the next best available guard in Eric Gordon. The Pacers, who are selecting higher than they did in real life, now take Brook Lopez, as they still need a center and he was a better prospect than Roy Hibbert was. With the loss of Camby, the Magic now need a young center who can hold down the paint and become a defensive anchor for the future, so they select Roy Hibbert. Since the Clippers are significantly better and have Dwight Howard and Elton Brand on their roster, they don't take DeAndre Jordan in the early second round, so now it's the Sonics who take him instead of LA. They also pair him up with Serge Ibaka, who they take with the 24th pick, so now the Sonics, who will become the Thunder in the beginning of the 2009 season, drafted Eric Gordon, Serge Ibaka, and DeAndre Jordan all in the same draft to complement Kevin Durant. The 2009 free agency isn't very eventful, as many of the big free agents who did leave their teams in real life, such as Elton Brand, Baron Davis, and Shawn Marion, stayed with their respective teams, and the Chauncey Billups Allen Iverson trade that happened in real life doesn't happen either. Now on to the 2009 season. 2009 was the breakout season for LeBron and the Cavs, as LeBron cements himself as the best individual player on the planet, averaging 28-7 on nearly 50% shooting, winning his first MVP and carrying the Cavs to an amazing record of 72-10. It seemed that the Cleveland championship drought would come to an end, as the Cavs had a great mix of young players in LeBron, Mo Williams, and Andrew Bynum, and savvy veterans in Jason Kidd and Rashard Lewis. This team was top 10 offensively and had the best defense in the league, as Bynum, LeBron, and Kidd and their coach Mike Brown created a defensive culture that spread to the whole team. The Pistons were so great, winning 69 games, but at this point everyone knew that they would inevitably choke in the playoffs. In the West, the Lakers and Spurs were still atop the conference, but the Clippers finally had a bounce-back season after 2 straight years of disappointment, winning 54 games as Dwight Howard finished top 5 in MVP voting, earning an All-NBA first-team selection, and Carmelo was rewarded with a second-team selection. In the playoffs, the headline would be which team would verse LeBron. People have debated who was better between Kobe and LeBron for the past 3 years, so many fans were anticipating this matchup. Many fans wondered how team-oriented basketball in San Antonio would fare against the star power LeBron James. And would the two best up-and-coming teams play each other to see who would reign supreme for the next 5 years in the Clippers and Cavs? The Cavs easily made their way to the finals, dispatching the 8th seeded Hawks, 4th seeded Heat despite a valiant effort by Wade, and the 2nd seeded Pistons, who once again collapsed on the biggest stage. In the West, the Clippers would defeat the Spurs in a tough 7-game series that was determined by which team had more star power, and that was LA with Dwight, Melo, and Rondo. In the conference finals, it was the Battle of Los Angeles. The big brother in the Lakers, who had been in this situation many times, spanning multiple eras, with West and Wilt in the 60s, the Showtime Lakers in the 80s, and now the Kobe-led Lakers in the mid-2000s, against the little brother Clippers, who had always been in the Lakers' shadows after 40-plus years of mediocrity. But this time, the little brother Clippers pulled off the upset as Dwight, Melo, and Rondo played sensational in the real-life 2009 playoffs, so their efforts combined made them unstoppable. Melo averaged 28 points on 45% shooting. Dwight abused old Shaq down low, scoring 26 points per game on 65% efficiency, grabbing 13 rebounds a game along with 2 blocks. And Rondo had his coming out party as a top 3 point guard, averaging an almost triple-double with 19 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 11.5 assists with nearly 3 steals per game, as the Clippers managed to defeat the Lakers in 6 games to take on LeBron and the Cavs. In the 2009 finals, the Cavs just seemed outmatched as once again the star power of Howard, Melo, and Rondo was too much for the Cavs. LeBron played phenomenal, averaging 39, 8, and 8 on 49% shooting, but everyone else on the Cleveland seemed to shrink on the biggest stage. Rashard Lewis averaged 17 points per game, but on 40% shooting, and Jason Kidd did well all around, averaging 14 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals a game on efficient shooting splits, but the Cavs will need more out of him to ever win a chip. The worst culprit out of all the steady Cavs players had to be Andrew Bynum. He simply wasn't ready for the moment as Dwight dominated him down low, as Bynum only averaged 6 points and 4 rebounds. Dwight won Finals MVP as his dominance down low elevated the Clippers to their first championship. In the 2009 draft, the Clippers no longer get Blake Griffin with the #1 pick since they just won the finals, so now it's the Kings who luck into Blake as they hope to turn around their franchise similar to how the Clippers have just done. The Warriors luck into the 2nd pick and take James Harden in hopes he can be a complementary piece to rising star Monte Ellis. The Thunder, who just hit 3 home runs in the previous draft, decide to risk their pick on junior out of Davidson, who was known in the 2009 NCAA season as the best 3-point shooter in Steph Curry. This means that the Nets get stuck with Hasheem after they missed out on Brook Lopez in the previous draft. The Bulls, who no longer have D Rose, now take Tyreke Evans, and the Sixers take DeMar DeRozan as they are selecting earlier in this draft. The Jazz take Brandon Jennings as they are still without a legitimate point guard since they didn't take Darren Williams in the 2005 draft. The Blazers, who don't have Brandon Roy now, need a guard and take the best one available in Drew Holiday. And the Suns, who are looking for Steve Nash's future replacement, as Nash was already 34, take Jeff Teague with their pick. In the 2009 free agency, the Lakers were making big moves to avenge their loss last year in the Western Conference Finals and hopefully win another championship. Chris Paul has spent the last 4 years playing for a mediocre and losing franchise in the Bobcats, who have shown little interest or ability to surround him with competent talent, so he demands a trade. This is where the Lakers come in and make a trade with Charlotte that David Stern can't veto. The Lakers trade Baron Davis, Al Harrington, a 2010 and a 2013 first in exchange for the superstar point guard. But their efforts didn't stop there. With Harrington gone, they signed Rasheed Wallace instead of Boston, who was in search of his first ring as his former team, the Pistons, could never make it over the hump. Ryan Anderson and Vince Carter aren't traded to the Magic, as the Magic are not in win-now mode as they were in real life during this time. Ben Gordon, who has flown under the radar during his time at the Wizards, decides to sign with the Mavericks instead of the Pistons, as the Mavericks too realize they need to restock on talent due to the Clippers' emergence, the Spurs' consistency, and the Lakers recently acquiring CP3 and Rasheed Wallace. Finally, Penny Hardaway hangs it up in what is now considered an illustrious first ballot Hall of Fame career, where he won 5 rings with 1 Finals MVP, earning 8 All-Star appearances and 6 All-NBA first-team selections, being the second option on one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history that dominated from 1998 to 2005, joining the likes of Scottie Pippen and James Worthy as the greatest sidekicks in NBA history. Now on to the 2010 season. This season was a revenge tour for LeBron and the Cavs. After a disappointing finals loss, the Cavs once again dominated the NBA landscape, winning 70 games as LeBron once again won MVP, averaging 37-9 on 50% shooting. The Heat experienced a bounce-back year as Wade's help finally contributed to winning basketball. In the West, the Lakers experienced an underwhelming season after being hyped up as the offseason champions with the acquisition of CP3 and Rasheed Wallace. This lack of success was highlighted by Chris Paul struggling to stay healthy as he only played in 45 games, and when he did play, him and Kobe weren't an automatic click as everyone had anticipated. But most importantly, the season showed that Shaq was no longer a positive for the Lakers, let alone a viable center, as he played his worst season in his entire career, averaging 12 points and 7 rebounds, being a defensive liability and struggling to stay healthy. It got so bad for the Lakers that there were games when they were trotting out starting lineups of Jordan Farmar, Shannon Brown, Kobe, Ron Artest, and a 35-year-old Rasheed Wallace, but this team somehow still managed to win 50 games. The Thunder's young core won an additional 23 games from the previous year, winning 50 this season, locking up the 6th seed as it seemed they could only go up from here. The Suns experienced a bounce-back season, winning a conference-high 59 games while having the league's best offense. Nash and Amari realized this year might be their last chance to ever win a championship given their age, and they wanted to take full advantage of their opportunity. In the East, there were only 2 teams with a realistic shot of making the finals in the Heat and the Cavs. In the conference finals, they faced each other in what was an underwhelming series. D-Wade was great, but the rest of the Heat just wasn't there to help him. Chalmers was too young, Mike Miller couldn't free himself up, and Grant Hill was the only person who could create his own shot besides Wade. It just seemed that the Cavs were determined to avenge their finals loss last season, as they easily beat Miami in 6 to reach their 2nd straight finals. The 2010 playoffs showed that the West was superior or more deep than the East, as every matchup had some sort of excitement surrounding it, excluding the 1-8 series in which the Suns swept the Rockets. The Lakers and Spurs once again had to face each other in the playoffs for the 6th time in the last 9 years, and the Spurs won with their team-oriented basketball and their advantage in the front court, as Rasheed Wallace and Shaquille O'Neal were too old for the young Marc Gasol and the ageless veteran Tim Duncan. The Clippers and Thunder played in a series what seemed like a deja vu for LA. There was this young team in Oklahoma that had this core that seemed inevitable to win at least one championship in the future and was only time and experience away from winning, but like the Mavs and Clippers series only a few years ago, the more experienced team wins soundly, but the future seemed bright for the Thunder. The Mavs and Blazers series was more exciting than people originally anticipated, with Aldridge and Holiday playing exceptional at such a young age, but in the end, a 7-game series, the team with the best player usually prevails, and that's exactly what Dirk and Dallas did as they moved on to the next round. The Suns once again dominated in their series as they were too hungry to finally win that chip after many years of coming up short. On the other side of the West bracket, the Clippers and Spurs had a series for the ages as all 7 games were decided by 10 points or less, with 2 of them going into overtime. The series was decided when in Game 7, Melo goes 1-on-1 against Manu Ginobili with 10 seconds left. He dribbles a bit to waste the clock, steps back, Manu comes for the contest, but it wasn't enough as Melo creates just enough space to get a shot off and wins the series for LA. In the conference finals, the Suns finally overcome the challenge of the Western Conference and make their first finals since 1993. In the finals, the city of Cleveland can finally rejoice as their 46-year championship drought is over, as the Cavs beat the Suns in 6 games, with LeBron winning Finals MVP with averages of 35 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists on 54% shooting, as the hometown kid finally proved his doubters wrong and won a championship for the city he has always been a part of. In the 2010 draft, the Sixers luck into the number 1 pick and take John Wall, pairing him with last year's selection DeMar DeRozan and star forward Andre Iguodala. The Warriors, who lost 2 more games than their real-life scenario, land the number 2 pick and take Boogie to pair with James Harden. Let's just say it's a good consolation for losing out on 2-time MVP Steph Curry. The Magic, who had the Timberwolves pick this year from the Marcus Camby trade years back, take Wesley Johnson in hopes he could be a complementary piece to Luol Deng, Devin Harris, and Roy Hibbert. The Wizards, who missed out on Wall, take the best available player in Greg Monroe. The Knicks, who keep their pick in this scenario because they never traded it away for Penny Hardaway, take Gordon Hayward with their selection. The Jazz, who are picking later, take Patrick Patterson as a precautionary move because their star power forward, Carlos Boozer, is currently a free agent and has shown signs of discontent within the organization. And finally, to round out the draft, the Bulls, who don't have Ben Gordon or Luol Deng, select Avery Bradley in hopes he can be the glue guy the Bulls desperately need. This offseason was dominated by the assembly of the Big Three Miami. Chris Bosh still joins Dwayne Wade after spending years without much team success in Denver, but LeBron stays in Cleveland as there are no Celtics he needs to overcome, and he's already been to the finals the last 2 years, winning once, so he feels he does not need more talent to succeed. Amari Stoudemire re-signs with Phoenix on a 3-year deal as he doesn't leave for the Knicks in real life, as Melo has no interest in leaving LA, and the Suns are just coming off a finals appearance. The Clippers, who are now in win-now mode, need to retain all their valuable pieces so Peja Stojakovic doesn't sign with Dallas like he did in real life. And since the Cavs keep LeBron, they don't move Mo Williams for assets, but add more experienced talent like Mike Miller, while also retaining a promising young piece in Danny Green. Now on to the 2011 season. The 2011 season was a down year for the Cavs to say the least, as they only got the 3rd seed, winning 53 games, while most fans expected them to win the championship as they retained most of their core while also adding Mike Miller. The East in general didn't have one standout team for the first time since LeBron and D-Wade's rise to stardom in the mid-2000s. The best team in the conference, the Bulls, won 55 games, but their team seemed greater than the sum of their parts, being an amazing defensive team, first in the league, headed by Avery Bradley and Joakim Noah. The Heat claimed the 2nd seed as the Wade-Bosh duo clicked the moment they both stepped on the court, and they were also surrounded by great role players in Udonis Haslem, Eddie House, and Kyle Lowry. In the West, the main headline was the Thunder, who won 62 games, as the team was led by league MVP Kevin Durant, who was also the scoring champ in back-to-back years, averaging 28 points on 46% shooting. This team was elite on both sides of the ball, being top 5 in both offensive and defensive rating, having elite scorers in Eric Gordon and Steph Curry, while also having defensive anchors in Thabo Sefolosha, Serge Ibaka, and DeAndre Jordan. The Spurs were amazing this season, winning 69 games, as their usual core was once again great, with Marc Gasol emerging as a star. The Suns were a dark horse pick to make it out of the West, with Nash once again leading the league in assists, and with Amari back, the team looked just as potent offensively last year as they did during their finals run. In the playoffs, the Heat beat the Cavs in the 2nd round, as no one had an answer for D-Wade. Ultimately, that was the deciding factor in the series, as the Heat won 6, with Wade averaging 27 points on 55% shooting. In the conference finals, the Heat would prevail against the Bulls, as the NBA is a star-driven league, and when you have the best player on the court, you'll usually win the series. It was a commendable effort by Chicago, but they didn't have enough offense to keep with the Heat without Derrick Rose or Luol Deng. In the West, the Thunder surprisingly swept the Suns in what looked like the end for Nash and Amari. They no longer looked elite offensively, as Sefolosha locked up Nash, and Ibaka and Jordan did a sensational job containing Amari. And on the other side of the ball, the Thunder just exposed the Suns' awful team defense. Steph and Eric Gordon were getting open looks for 3, and KD was getting free lanes to the paint. At the end of the day, the Suns looked too old and slow to keep up with the hyper-athletic Thunder. In the conference finals, the same could be said for the Spurs. They did extend the series by 2 games, as they were a better team defensively than Phoenix, but offensively the Spurs struggled to get open looks, as the Thunder were too long and athletic for a lot of the Spurs' older veterans, and their old reliable Tim Duncan struggled offensively, as Ibaka and Jordan did a sensational job contesting his jumpers and hook shots. In the finals, the Thunder capped off their dream season with a 4-1 victory over the Heat. OKC's plan for this series was to eliminate Bosh, and they did exactly that. They put an array of long and athletic defenders on Bosh that limited his offensive touches and made him work to get clean looks, frustrating him the whole series. And offensively, Miami had no answer for KD. He was getting to his spots, hitting shots no human should ever hit, pulling up from 30 feet away. And when they doubled him, he just let Eric Gordon and Steph Curry do their thing. KD became the first player since Jordan in 1996 to win the MVP, be the league scoring champ, and win Finals MVP all in the same season. KD showed he was now the 2nd best player in the NBA behind LeBron, averaging 31 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists on 55% shooting from the field and 40% from 3 in these playoffs. In the 2011 draft, the Clippers were a mid-tier playoff team, so their pick doesn't become the number 1 selection in 2011 as it did in real life, so now it's the Indiana Pacers who get Kyrie, joining Paul George in what should be a great 1-2 punch. The Hornets land Tristan Thompson instead of Cleveland, and the Sixers, now with John Wall and DeMar DeRozan, need a center, so they take Jonas Valanciunas. The Warriors, who are now selecting higher, still need a guard to complement James Harden, so they take the UConn sensation who led his team to the 2011 March Madness title in Kemba Walker. The Raptors, who are selecting lower than they originally in 2011, and without DeMar DeRozan on their roster, still need a shooting guard, so they select Klay Thompson. The Spurs, after their embarrassing conference finals loss, need young talent to keep up with OKC, so they still trade George Hill for Kawhi Leonard, but this time Hill is going to Sacramento, not Indiana. The only notable changes in the 2011 free agency is that David West signs with Miami, who too believe they need one final piece to propel themselves to a title. After spending the last 2 seasons on a disappointing Lakers team, talks begin of Chris Paul wanting to join his buddy LeBron in Cleveland after his contract is up next summer. And finally, this is the year Shaq finally retired, who now many fans consider the GOAT, not MJ. Shaq finishes with 6 rings, one more than Jordan, with 4 MVPs, the same as him, with at least 30,000 points and 14,000 rebounds. It is impossible to say that Shaq is not a top 5 player all time, and the best center, with all these individual accolades, to go along with being the number 1 option on one of the greatest dynasties ever in the 2000s era Magic. Thank you if you sat through the entire video and watched it. I was working on this for a really long time, and I'm glad I finally was able to get it out. If you enjoyed it, like the video, comment, subscribe, share with anyone who might be interested, If you like this video, I made a video on Steph Curry about a year ago that I believe has aged pretty well. If you want to check that out, link for it will be in the description, and you can also click on my channel page. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next video.